Hi, I'm Lisa, and today we'll be briefly discussing the subject of compassion fatigue. As occupational therapists, we are concerned about our clients as whole beings and how they function in their world. We are taught to use ourselves as instruments of therapy for others, but can that be detrimental to our own health? Can we care too much? In my research, I kept seeing references to Charles Figley's definition of compassion fatigue, but couldn't find his early books. I had to settle for an interview I did find online, but he at least provides a definition. Note the references to the tension for the helper. More important, note the possibility of what can happen in the process of helping. Also in my research, I found a website that was quite helpful in giving a basic description of compassion fatigue, and that was Compassion Fatigue Solutions. On it, you will find a 90-minute video in which Françoise Mathieu explains in quite accessible language what compassion fatigue is. I've referred to her to compassion fatigue throughout my presentation, but please see the references to find a link to that video. On the video, she also uses a quote from Raymond in 1996. The expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet. That made me think. So why is compassion fatigue important? Shapiro, Brown, and Beagle point to stress hindering our attention and concentration. Mathieu discusses the negative repercussions in the workplace through sliming. When a therapist needs to unload their thoughts, they may slime an already overloaded coworker, a friend, or family member. Mathieu also offers suggestions for mitigating this sliming process. Lindley and Joseph found that from their 156 clinical and counseling psychological therapists, those who had been counseling for longer overall periods of time reported, quote, more negative psychological changes and burnout. Further research is clearly needed. That was mentioned in all of the articles that I found. So who is susceptible? I've listed a number on this slide: first-line responders, family members, teachers, people working with marginalized populations, and administrative and other support personnel. While Zeidner points to close to 50% of professionals working in trauma being at risk for compassion fatigue, many more people may be susceptible. What about the secretaries who type up the reports, or the cooks at schools who hear too many stories? The breadth of OT is such that I believe it reasonable to assume that our roles will be ever increasing. Mathieu points to heavy and repetitive workloads as being contributors to compassion fatigue. The quality of clinical supervision is also important. Do we need more frequent, different check-in times and ways with our supervisors around more challenging clients? Lindley and Joseph found their participants who felt they, quote, received formal supervision or support for their work as a therapist and, quote, reported better personal growth. Other research shows the importance of what the individual brings to the table. Compassion fatigue can also be exacerbated by professional burnout and vicarious traumatization. So what are the signs? Lombardo and Iyer separate symptoms into three categories: work-related, which would be avoidance or dread of working with certain patients; reduced ability to feel empathy; frequent use of sick days; lack of joyfulness. Physical symptoms might include headaches, digestive problems, muscle tension, sleep disturbances, fatigue, and cardiac symptoms. The emotional, a select few, range from mood swings to oversensitivity to excessive use of substances, anger and resentment, depression, loss of objectivity, memory issues, and poor concentration, focus, and judgment. I've provided the reference for you to see a full list, and Mathieu and Shapiro, Brown, and Beagle also provide symptoms. So what to do? Research continues in the area of optimal self-care methods. We can ensure that informal and formal debriefing is properly taking place, and we can try to avoid sliming and being slimed. Mindfulness-based stress reduction appears to be helpful, and management could look at clinical supervision and support, including formal and informal debriefing practices, and research into interventions as to how those practices are actually working with their staff. Help for the helpers. Healthy rituals for relaxation are provided by Lombardo and Iyer. So, of course, diet, exercise, sleep, uh, balancing life and work as much as we can. Everything that we know is already good for us. But also, the Medcare link provides the Green Cross proposed standards of care, which include self-care strategies, inventories, and prevention plan development. Know your local crisis support contacts. And if you do have access to an employee assistance program, make sure that you know those contact numbers as well. So it would appear that we can indeed care too much. Remember to have compassion for yourself as well as for those around you. Thank you for your time.